So it's my pleasure to introduce Sofia Bernhard, who is a mother of an extremely preterm infant. So please come. And it's very important to reflect and to listen and to reflect on the experience of parents, and who are the primary caregivers and are fully involved in the feeding of their infants. So we will hear today Sofia talking about parental experience of feeding and eating. So, please.
Hi, my name is Sofia Bernhard, and I'm here to share a parental perspective on feeding an extremely preterm born child, with main focus on our 14 weeks at the neonatal intensive care unit. Before I start my presentation, I would like to thank Stina Klemming and the Karolinska NIDCAP Training and Research Center for inviting me to speak at this conference. I feel honored to have the opportunity to give a voice to premature children and their parents, although, of course, I can only speak for our family. Others may have different stories with different experiences. So, having that said, over to my presentation. I am the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was born in April 2003 at Karolinska Hospital in Solna. She was born extremely preterm at 25 weeks of pregnancy with emergency cesarean section due to me suffering from a severe case of HELLP syndrome. We spent a total of 14 weeks in the NICU, first 7 weeks at Karolinska, followed by 7 weeks at Danderyd. At birth, our daughter's weight was 492 grams, and she was 28 centimeters long. As you can understand, this food maker was not a very good one during the last month or so of pregnancy. It was actually going for a complete collapse of the systems. However, things turned out for the best, and today our daughter is a beautiful teenager of 175 centimeters, almost my length, who multiplied her birth weight by the 100. Let me take you through a tiny part of our journey. I was invited here today to give you a parental perspective on feeding and eating. That means I will share some of our experiences in those areas with you. However, feeding and eating is so closely related to all other areas of our human body, it is almost impossible to single out just eating as some separate entity. Therefore, more areas will be covered during my presentation to also give you a sense of the complex situation you get thrown into when you suddenly face the fact that you become parents in April instead of late July, facing a child that fits in the palm of your hand and will not make a sound until the respirator tube is replaced by a CPAP 23 days later. So, getting the hand of feeding and eating is just one of gazillion tasks you have to learn as a parent of an extremely preterm born child. And all of them is part of some strange, surreal crash course in survival that you definitely didn't apply for. And part of the course is learning to make your own experiences along the way. Our experience, however, did prove to be far better than we could have hoped for, with a very sharp learning curve for us and a positive development of our child. In retrospect, we believe there were some crucial factors that contributed to our physical as well as our mental survival. And those factors were an including context based on active parental participation, treating the family as a whole, the importance of parents' well-being as part of increasing positive outcome from the medical treatment of the child. What we experienced and learned during this strange period still is so useful for us in our still ongoing challenges as preemie parents. Our daughter was our first child, so just being parents was new to us. However, it didn't include many of the things we had imagined it would be like, to put it mildly. Starting a family in 3 square meters in a hospital next to an incubator is, for example, not part of the picture. But because of how the care was given to our daughter, including us in almost every way, it was okay. What any normal person would consider to be a crisis situation that will make you totally lose it, we were actually okay. Between all the frustration, worries, and difficulties, we were able to smile, even laugh out of joy. All part of a plan to make us feel okay, of course, and thereby be able to contribute to the survival and well-being of our daughter. But still, it is hard not being able to hold your child in your arms until after 3 weeks, the time it took for her to be stable enough. Not being able to pull your child close, hug her, smell her, kiss her. All the things we take for granted. I will never forget when one of our doctors, Charlotte, after 3 weeks, 22 days at 11:05 in the evening, opened the incubator and invited me to kiss my daughter's foot for the first time. Sorry. So this is me 15 years later. Because of the infection risk, it hadn't been possible before that. So, reaching in, giving my daughter her first kiss on her foot was an overwhelming experience for me, as you can see. So, we almost lost her 9 days earlier, when the doctors had to replace the respirator tube. So it meant the world to me to be able to give her a kiss. I will never forget it, and it makes it hard to speak even today. So, it was moments like those, an endless line of small but oh so important acts of kindness, as part of including us, that made all the difference, making us feel that we were the parents. It was our child. That way, all the strange routines we had to adapt to became part of our everyday life, step by step, slowly normalizing everything that in fact is not normal at all. The key understanding, I believe, is that in NICUs practicing NIDCAP, every doctor and nurse truly and deeply understood 2 things. There is a life here that needs to be saved through medical procedures. And let us teach and include the parents as much as possible. If they can perform a care act, let them. But also, highly important, 2 people just became parents, and they want and need to do all the normal parenting thingies with their newborn. Let's make that possible in every way we can. For me, that was the ultimate definition of respect, professionalism, and most important, of love. Of course, my husband and I didn't accomplish all this by ourselves. We were not alone on this difficult and challenging journey. Normally, it takes 2 to make a baby. In this case, however, a lot more people were involved. In the shape of highly professional doctors and nurses, hundreds of angels stood by our side. They did their utmost to create a calm, loving, and safe space in the middle of chaos, giving us not just the benefit from their medical skills, but also their heart and soul. The Swedish neonatal care gave us world-class care in every area, creating a safe and loving context for us to grow in. Because it's not just about making the child survive physically. It's about giving us parents the tools to handle the medical situation. It's about creating a space for the whole family to cope and grow mentally. A highly professional care takes the whole family into account, treating us as an important unit as a whole. To gain a sustainable development of the child in a positive direction, the well-being of the parents is seen as crucial. In a chaotic crisis situation, they succeed in making us feel not just a part of the given care, but a crucial part. They made us feel, for real, that we were a family. This was our child, our journey, even though our daughter's life literally was in their hands. We were taught to be a part of almost every care action, even medical ones. At first given the parent's role to hold and to ease. But the more stable and healthier she got and the more we learned, the more we could perform ourselves. And we were allowed to. By the time we got home, we were almost half through med school. So, over to focusing on our experiences on feeding our preemie. As I've already said, our daughter spent the first 3 weeks intubated in an incubator. There she was, fed breast milk through a feeding tube going into her body through her nose, right next to the respiratory tube, or maybe it was placed in the mouth. Either way, a lot of things in that small face. As I was on heavy medication myself in the beginning, she was giving donated milk. Thank you, all sisters out there. However, I started practicing with a breast pump, and after 6 days I got out of medication and was able to give her my own milk. At 11 o'clock in the day, 23 days after her entering the world, 1 day after the kiss, she got out of the incubator for the first time, and I could finally hold her in my arms as she lay skin to skin on my chest. If the kiss was overwhelming, there are no words to describe that moment. I was in heaven, surrounded by highly medically skilled angels. One of them was Johanna. Our daughter's weight was now 567 grams, so she had gained only 75 grams in 3 weeks. She was like a feather on my chest. This was also the day when, for the first time, we could feed her in our arms. From now on, she was making huge progress in her recovery and growth. We all did. Hallelujah. Our daughter spent her first 66 days in an incubator before she could move to a bed. That meant handling her and feeding her in the incubator. Once she got the hang of it, it was okay. After all, she was not supposed to even have left the womb yet. On these pictures I will show you, she has grown much since day one. So in the incubator, feeding her meant giving milk through a feeding tube while holding on our hands on her. This was, I remember, the routine. First, a nurse did a minor medical check to make sure our daughter was ready for feeding. Then our daughter got a drop of milk in the mouth for tasting experience in connection to feeding. A dummy or soother was for training to suckle, together with the tasting experience and getting milk in the stomach. Most of the time, especially when she was even more fragile, the feeding process took place under a dark red incubator cover to imitate the womb in order to minimize sensory information. Feeding a preemie on us parents involves the same procedure as in the incubator, really. Feeding development includes eating as often as possible in our arms via feeding tube with the CPAP on. The older and more stable she got, this was routine. So here you can see the big anticipation of food, close eye and body contact, a drop of milk in the mouth. This is great for the tasting experience. Now she's feeling really good, she's smiling. And there she lies, sleeping, satisfied with a full tummy of fast asleep. And she was also encouraged to suck her thumb. Another way to feed our daughter was learning how to use a cup. Handy to know if the feeding tube would accidentally get pulled out. It was a bit tricky to get the hang of it, and we were given a huge responsibility to perform this act. Once she choked a bit, and saturation immediately dropped. It all went well, but it was a constant challenge and balancing on a fine line. Something as normal as feeding your child could go very wrong if not performed correctly and with highly skilled supervision from nurses next to you. Now, this was, of course, the ultimate goal, to breastfeed. Fact is, I started practicing breastfeeding right after she got rid of the respirator tube and into CPAP. I was in a very respectful and loving way encouraged and helped to be able to breastfeed with all the tubes, machines, and medical equipment on and all around us. I really wanted to be able to breastfeed our daughter for so many reasons. The medical perspective being the most important, along with the closeness it brings. It was very hard for me, as I could only manage to produce a very small amount. On the other hand, her first meal being 0.5 milliliters and going for 10 milliliters per meal after 3 weeks, it was enough. But oh, how I struggled with that. I did, however, get encouraged by the nurses to keep my spirits and continue practicing until she was strong enough to suckle. So, while practicing, she got my milk through the feeding tube. On her 11th week birthday, after 77 days, I made a note in my diary. Big breastfeeding progress today. She celebrated by almost attacking the breast and was able to suckle properly for the first time. Okay, it's exhausting to practice. It's exhausting to cope, to learn, and to change. It's exhausting to grow. To grasp the magnitude of the profound change it involves having an extremely premature child, it is impossible to even try to explain. My husband and I spent hours and hours sitting skin to skin, holding, feeding, singing, breathing, connecting, and sleeping. Sleeping heals. Oxytocin streams through our bodies. We are whole and we are safe. The power and capacity of our bodies never ceases to amaze me. It took our daughter 54 days to reach 1 kilo at the 33rd week. After being hospitalized for almost 14 weeks, our medical, feeding and change crash course was running towards its end. And our daughter was, after a lot of ups and downs, healthy, stable, and big enough to go home. She was now in a heavy weight class champion with impressive 1,584 grams at the weigh-in. So, when we were at the NICU, it was only the last 2 or 3 days that we got to spend in a separate room, living together as a family with our child. This was to ensure that we were ready to go, and everything was beautifully arranged for us. We could finally have some privacy, even watch TV. Still feeling so safe with highly skilled personnel just seconds away. We felt we went to heaven. Being located on the top floor, of course, contributed to that feeling. We were living La Dolce Vita. Having our own beds meant that for the first time we were able to actually lie on a bed next to our daughter. That was a big thing for us, and I will never forget that amazing, heartwarming, spiritual moment. It also meant I could breastfeed in bed, lying on our own bed sheets. The smallest things meant the world to us. Going home meant bringing half a hospital care material stock as a small survival kit, including lots of extra special milk replacer. Going home with a preemie is nothing like going home with a full-grown child. I know I did that too, 2 years later. Everything was taken care of for us. The personnel made sure we knew how everything worked and that we were ready to go. Day 96. Finally, on the 25th of July, in the middle of summer, after 3.5 months at the NICU, we got to bring our almost 1.8 kilo and 43 centimeter long baby home with us. This was really happening. We were on our way. We all felt very content and excited, and thanks to great support, we felt confident about the huge task ahead of us. Everything felt huge, even the car safety seat. Coming home was an amazing feeling of freedom and joy, just hanging out together, cuddling, going for long walks out in the surrounding beautiful nature. Living in Sweden also made it possible for us both to fully focus on the recovery and development of our preemie, and my husband didn't go back to work until fall. It was also later that fall that she could get out of the oxygen halter and feeding tube, and we were now dependent on her feeding only through the mouth, swallowing food, just like most of us do. Coming home meant the start of a whole new journey for us, where feeding and eating was just one of many challenges. We had excellent support from nurses coming to our home, starting the day after we got home and lasting as long as our daughter's feeding was still depending on her feeding tube and her saturation still depending on the oxygen halter, which took a couple of months. She started trying real food eventually, just like any other kid, while she was breastfed and eating from the bottle. She ate, but not as much as we wished for, and she ate very slowly. It was actually a constant struggle for us, and there was nothing more we could have done. She gained weight slowly, but was not putting on as much as we hoped for. On the other hand, she has always been above average length on the normal curve. At the age of 18 months, corrected age, she stopped swallowing food completely. Now she was fully depending on milk replacer from a bottle. It was not until she was almost 5 years old that she started swallowing food again. And the reason spells constipation. Once she got the right medicine, one for adults, it turned literally overnight. At 15, she still has some remaining trouble related to eating, even though she is a perfectly healthy teenager. It concerns lack of feeling hunger sometimes, which results in her forgetting to eat. It also concerns sometimes eating way too slow, not quite feeling or knowing when she is full. We believe it's related to her early feeding through a tube, pushing as much as possible for her to regain some of her extreme lack of weight at birth. We believe that might cause the brain to not develop those functions properly. Anyhow, this means that we still have to remind her to eat, and even remind her to actually put food in her mouth while we are at the table eating. The older she gets, the more responsibility she can take, of course, and intellectually understand that she needs to eat, how much and at what pace is actually functional to eat. No one who read, hear, or watches those pictures of an extremely preterm-born child growing and developing the way our daughter and many other preemies do can contradict the fact that this, obviously, are lives worth saving. But those small children need extra attention for many, many years to come, not just during and short after NICU. Even though we are truly blessed as we understand it, compared to many other preterm-born children, having no major drawbacks at all, there are many areas of improvement that we have identified over the course of 15 years. Some of them are in the NICU, things we missed that we believe now are in place, not quite sure about that. For one, separate rooms for mothers to pump milk. Not all are comfortable doing everything together. For me, who managed to squeeze out 15 milliliters in half an hour, it was not a happy situation to sit next to the ones whose milk literally shot out of their boobies. To be able to live together as a family during intensive care, that's the other thing. We drove 2,500 kilometers that summer, back and forth between our home and the hospital to be with our daughter. Even today, I have a hard time understanding how it is possible that I didn't chain myself to the incubator, screaming and refusing to leave my child. In the NICU, we were given the best care and support in every way. After getting out of the hospital, however, when that new journey started, a point of contact should really have helped a lot. Some person who could help coordinate life around our daughter over time. Not just a huge amount of visits to different hospitals and care units, but also in relation to feeding and eating, and later on in relation to preschool, school, and pediatricians outside neonatology. Someone with competence on both feeding a preterm-born child, as well as the different physical, cognitive, and emotional needs in so many areas for so many years. It is, I believe, totally unacceptable that so many of these wonderful children still suffer severely from constipation, that they do not get the right support in the form of special pedagogy at school. Parents like us struggle hard, and it's completely impossible to be understood. Sometimes it feels like we have been at war for 15 years, and we are completely worn out. This group of children and their families are in great need of help and support all the way up to adulthood. If society spends so much money on rescuing these children, they also need to take full responsibility in supporting them in many areas for years to come. It's high time for politicians to wake up. It's time to educate relevant people in different professional groups getting in contact with our preterm-born children so that they truly can understand just how important they are for the well-being of our children, so that they too can understand just how necessary it is for those children's parents to be fully included in their children's development. I do not want to read even one more desperate Facebook status from a parent of a preemie with serious long-term constipation. No wonder they don't eat. Who can eat when you're all blown up from constipation? And I do not want any more parents getting completely worn out by constantly claiming their preterm-born child's rights and needs in relation to the school system. Oh, how I wish this message would reach politicians. These are huge and urgent questions that needs to be solved now. After this somewhat desperate cry for help, urging politicians to please wake up, I wish to end my speech with a big thank you. I cannot enough express our forever gratitude to all these amazing human beings that saved both my own and our daughter's life, with high quality care in every area. Each and every one of them are our superheroes, our angels. And politicians need to understand just how important they are. Without them, without you, there is no life for these extremely premature children, literally. So thank you from the bottom of my heart, and thank you for listening.